Hey guys, tonight we're heading back to ancient Rome, not to the grandeur of the Colosseum or the political scheming of the Senate, but somewhere grittier, dirtier, sweatier. You're waking up on a straw-stuffed mat. The smell of old leather and vinegar thick in the air. Wooden training swords thud against splintering shields nearby. Your joints ache before your eyes even open. The floor's still damp from yesterday's training. And your stomach? It's been grumbling since last night. Welcome to the life of a Roman gladiator. You probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your city and local time in the comments. It's always fun to see who's drifting off from where. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge through the low corridor of the Ludus, the gladiator training school. The walls sweat more than the men, and the straw underfoot squishes ominously from last night's storm. It's not yet dawn, but your internal clock knows what time it is. Barley time. Again, the kitchen's more of a smoke hole with a shelf, and today's cook is stirring something that looks familiar. That's because it is pulse, barley porridge. Again, you shuffle into the line of tired, half-dressed men, each of you too hungry to complain but not hungry enough to lie to yourselves. It's never good. This stuff. Warm. Yes. Filling. Sure. Inspiring? Only if you count the urge to revolt. The porridge slops into your wooden bowl with a wet thud. You hold it close, pretending it has more than 3 ingredients. Barley, water, maybe a pinch of salt if someone was feeling rebellious. The heat from the bowl fogs up your view for a moment. You lean into it. You savor the steam more than the food. Historians agree that gladiators were called hordearii, literally, barley men. It wasn't a compliment, even in Rome, where barley was food for horses and peasants. You're living on it by design. Turns out, barley builds mass. It's cheap. It's fibrous. It sticks to your ribs like a clingy X. You spoon it in while sitting on a log someone dragged inside. Your fellow fighters murmuring complaints with their mouths full. One guy chews so slowly he might be asleep. Another mutters something about how the porridge is chunkier today. And everyone pretends not to notice the dead rat in the corner. This morning ritual doesn't change. It's as constant as bruises and the sharp tang of rusted iron in your nose. The idea was to bulk you up. Fat was considered armor. And gladiators weren't prized for speed. You're here to bleed in style, not dodge anything. The texture of pulse is an experience. Think slightly wet gravel mixed with sadness. No honey, no milk, no cinnamon, just grain boiled until surrender. You once saw a centurion's dog sniff it and walk away. That dog eats bones. Still, you're grateful. The cook could have gone creative. Like last week's peppered millet incident. Your intestines are still holding a grudge. Modern researchers, yes, people today literally dig up gladiator bones and analyze them, have confirmed the diet was overwhelmingly plant-based. High in carbohydrates, low in variety. But here's the fringe theory that keeps popping up. Some believe the monotony was intentional. Not just for cost or convenience, but to dull the senses. Keep the men strong, but manageable. Bread and circuses, minus the bread. As you eat, a rooster crows outside, or tries to. It's more of a raspy cough. You picture it nibbling on the same barley you are. You don't mind. At this point, you relate to birds more than people. Someone nearby dares to dream aloud. What if meat today? The entire room chuckles, a quiet, resigned laugh. That's gladiator humor. Not clever, not sharp, just shared delusions and chronic hunger. Today's pulse has a bit of char to it, probably from the bottom of the pot. A rogue lentil shows up halfway through. You consider naming it Gerald. It's the most flavorful thing you'll eat all week. You wash it down with a splash of posca, sour, vinegary water. But that's a treat for another section. You finish your bowl, scraping it clean with a finger and licking off the last speck. There's nothing romantic here. No hearty breakfasts. No communal joy. Just the clink of bowls. The occasional belch. And one guy retching in the corner from yesterday's fight. He's not dead, but close. Everyone decides not to look. The cook collects bowls with the indifference of someone who's done this for years. You hand yours over and shuffle back outside. where the training yard awaits like a sandy punch to the soul. Sunlight's starting to creep over the wall, turning the stone red and gold. It'd be beautiful if you weren't about to get bludgeoned. But let's go back to the food, after all. That's the point. Breakfast is important, even in ancient Rome, especially if you're risking evisceration before lunch. Gladiators were assets, trained and fed for function. Your diet is a tool, like your wooden sword or that sack of sand you've been punching for months. It keeps you heavy, it keeps you slow, but it keeps you alive, usually. You think back to yesterday's drill, shield formations under the summer sun. Sweat in your eyes, pulls in your throat. One guy collapsed mid-thrust, right into the latrine pit. The overseer made you all finish your rounds first before fishing him out. He's fine, probably. As the sky brightens, the smell of the kitchen lingers. Barley, always barley, occasionally mixed with spelt if the quartermaster's in a good mood. You once heard about another ludus that served oats. Oats. The audacity. There are whispered rumors, always whispered, that the champion of your group, the undefeated Thracian, once ate roast duck. No one believes it. That kind of thing only happens in mosaics. You sigh, stretch, and feel your shoulder pump like a bad hinge. The porridge sits in your gut like a sandbag. You'll need every bit of it. Today's sparring is with iron practice blades. Less forgiving, less wooden. You grab your gear from the rack. The leather smells of mold and blood. You slip into your chest guard and pick up your shield, its surface worn smooth by endless blocks. As you step into the ring, someone shouts, "Last one to puke buys the wine." A joke, of course. No one can afford wine. Your opponent nods. He looks tired. You nod back. You're both full of barley, regrets, and just enough muscle to survive another morning. The overseer barks an order. You raise your shield, and as wood cracks against metal and the crowd of trainers jeers from the shade, one thought drifts through your mind like a cool breeze. At least you didn't eat millet today. You'll crave that bland pulse again tomorrow. You'll hate it as you eat it, but you'll eat it anyway. Because you're a gladiator, a hordearius, a man of barley, and there's no escaping breakfast. Not unless you win, or die. You wipe the sweat from your face using the inside of your tunic, which is somehow both damp and scratchy. The morning bout is over, barely 2 hours in, and you already feel like you've been trampled by a chariot. Your opponent limps away, mumbling something about his shoulder, and you catch your breath against a sun-warmed pillar. That barley porridge you scooped into your mouth earlier? It's now sitting in your stomach like an emotionally unavailable brick. You're hoping for a moment's rest, but hope is a currency not accepted here. The trainer gestures toward the mess area again. It's mid-morning, and guess what? It's time for more pulls. This one's slightly different, if by different, you mean reheated and possibly thicker. You ladle it yourself this time, straight from a blackened bronze pot that steams with a smell equal parts earth and despair. You've come to recognize variations in porridge by consistency. Too runny means the grain ration is low. Too thick means someone got distracted and scorched the bottom. Today's, just lumpy enough to remind you that this life never smooths out. There are no seconds, not unless someone dies during training. That's not a joke. One less mouth means one more scoop for the rest. You'd feel guilty if you weren't so hungry all the time. Still, you sit and eat with the others. The rhythm of chewing, of bowls clinking, is almost meditative. You're not talking. Nobody talks much at the second meal. It's not worth the effort. And what would you say anyway? Today's barley tastes like last Tuesday. Pulse, for all its monotony, was shockingly central to the Roman diet, even beyond the gladiator schools. Roman soldiers, farmers, even some urban plebs made it a staple. High in carbs, cheap to produce, and shelf-stable enough to survive weeks in storage. In fact, scholars still argue whether pulse was seen as a peasant's food or an honorable symbol of Roman discipline. Either way, you're definitely not feeling honored as you choke it down. Sometimes you imagine it's something else. Something good, maybe. Honeyed wheat with a sprinkle of nuts. Or one of those Etruscan cheese breads you overheard the cook mumble about once. Longingly, but hallucinating meals is dangerous. It makes returning to reality even worse. You watch a fellow trainee scrape the sides of his bowl with a dull wooden spoon, tilting it for every last dribble. He's the youngest in the group, barely 16. Maybe, with fuzz on his upper lip and the optimism still clinging to his bones. You feel sorry for him. Not because he's young, but because he hasn't given up on hope yet. The head trainer walks by. He glances into your bowls with the apathy of a man who's seen too many bowls and not enough death. His shadow passes over your face like a bad omen. Eat fast. Back on the field soon. You do eat fast, which is unfortunate, because the faster you eat this stuff, the more it sits in your gut like a sandbag. Still, you've learned the trick. Don't chew too much. Don't think about texture. Don't think about taste. Just shovel, swallow, and go. The Romans didn't just rely on barley for energy, they believed it tempered the body. Some even wrote that it cooled the blood and calmed the spirit. You look around the room, where half the men are nursing bruises and 2 are bleeding from the ear. So much for calm spirits. Outside, the sun is cruelly bright. You squint as you return to the sand, every grain of it seemingly crafted by Jupiter himself to wedge into your sandals. The pulse begins to slosh as you stretch. You imagine your stomach as a dull clay pot, half filled with warm glue. You long for something crisp, or cold, or crunchy. Just once, you remember the time someone found a dried fig at the bottom of a ration bag and bit into it like treasure. Everyone watched. No one asked for a bite. It was too sacred. The guy got a cracked tooth from the pit, but even he called it worth it. The thing is, your whole life now exists in 3 stages: before pulls, eating pulls, and digesting pulls. The rest is window dressing. Every fight, every bruise, every practice jab, all fueled by the blandest sustenance Rome could muster. Back in the yard, drills resume. You shift from swordplay to weighted running. Laps around the ludus wall with a bundle of rocks strapped to your chest. Every step pushes the porridge higher. You can feel it threatening rebellion, but it never quite rises. You're too trained for that, or too resigned. There's something funny about this. You're training to be an instrument of public spectacle, a slayer of men, a hero of the arena, and yet your fuel is what farmers feed to oxen. It's like crafting a war chariot from driftwood and prayers. You think about the Roman elite, with their exotic fruits, imported spices, and roasted game birds. You imagine a senator chewing a grape slowly while watching men like you bludgeon each other. You wonder if he's ever eaten pulls. You doubt it. Later, after the drills, you and the others rest under the overhang, backs against sun-warmed brick. Someone's humming an old tune, out of tune, and another is using his practice sword to scratch "I hate barley" into the dirt. You don't stop him. He's expressing what all of you feel. One guy, older than the rest, claims he once ate something called meritum, a garlic and herb cheese spread mashed with olive oil and vinegar. He describes it like a poem. Sharp, he says, green, tangy. No one really believes him. But you all listen. It's comforting to imagine. That's what food becomes here. Not a pleasure, not even a comfort, just a memory factory. Something that keeps you tethered to a world beyond swords and bruises. A world with more than 3 ingredients. There's one cook, Tacitus. They call him, even though that wasn't his real name, who sometimes throws in a pinch of dried herb if the overseer's distracted. A rogue sprig of thyme. A hint of wild fennel. The taste hits your tongue like lightning. And then it's gone. You once told a new recruit, "Don't get used to flavor. It's a form of false hope." He laughed, until his 3rd day of pulls. Then he stopped laughing forever. Even so, you look forward to it. Every bite is predictable, but that predictability is a weird kind of comfort. The world outside is chaos, barbarians, disease, corrupt politics, but pulls? Pulls never lies. Even the act of eating it becomes ceremonial. You know exactly how many bites you can take before your stomach starts to protest. You've perfected the scrape, spin, scoop method for getting the last bits from your bowl. You could probably eat it blindfolded. You probably have. When you lie down that evening, bruised and crusted in dried sweat, you can still feel it in your belly. A warm ballast, anchoring you to the day. You press your hand to your stomach and sigh. Because no matter how many times you eat it, pulls always wins. It fills you. It humbles you. It dares you to ask for more. And you never do. The next morning arrives like a rude surprise. You're already half awake before the rooster gives its pitiful gravelly screech. It's not so much an alarm as a warning. Another day, another bowl, another few thousand steps toward possibly dying in front of a crowd eating sausages. You roll off your mat, bones clicking like dice in a cup, and shuffle toward the cookhouse. Your limbs ache from yesterday's drills, particularly the new one where they tied sandbags to your ankles and made you sprint in a circle until you could taste your own heartbeat. But you already know what's waiting for you. Pulls. Today's batch smells slightly nuttier. And for one fleeting, stupid second, your stomach lurches with hope. Maybe today it's something new. But no, the nuttiness is just a result of yesterday's bottom scrapings. Reheated again. You ladle it into your bowl with the tired grace of a man accepting his fate. Here's something most modern folks miss. The diet wasn't bad because of the food itself. It was bad because of the sameness. There's only so much barley your body, mind, and soul can endure before you start dreaming about fruit like it's a forbidden lover. Rome. In all its culinary glory, spices from the east. Honey from Iberia, cheeses aged to perfection, delivered to its prized gladiators, a bowl of boiled grain. Every single day, you slump beside a familiar pair of sandals, your training partner. Flaccus, not his real name, of course. Everyone has a nickname here. Flaccus, because of his perpetually unimpressed expression and his complete lack of visible biceps. He's halfway through his bowl, chewing with his eyes closed. You know what I miss? He mutters. Don't say figs. No, he swallows, chewing something with texture. You both sit for a moment, thinking about crunch. Remember crunch? That glorious sound? Pulls makes no sound. It is the food equivalent of background noise. It's the edible version of shrugging. Historically, gladiators did occasionally get treats, but they were rare, reserved for special days or victories in the arena. Sometimes, a sponsor might throw in a feast before a major event. This was part marketing, part manipulation. Fatten up the fighter. Make him sluggish but dramatic. All the better for a good bleed. You once heard a story, probably a lie, of a fighter who received a plate of roasted dormice stuffed with pine nuts before a major bout. Fancy, but also dormice. Somehow, barley seems safer. The bowl empties faster than you'd like. You consider licking it clean. But the wood has absorbed too much over time, flavors you'd rather not name. You hand it back and head outside to the latrine trench, which is just far enough from the main yard to feel like a break, but just close enough to smell. While waiting in the line of other men shifting awkwardly, you think about digestion. Exciting, right? But honestly, it becomes a major topic when your entire diet consists of fiber-heavy gruel. Let's just say, there are no secrets here. You know who's regular, you know who's not, and everyone knows when the barley hits wrong. Historians still argue whether gladiators were given such high-fiber diets for practical reasons or if it was just a happy accident. There's the theory that barley and legumes helped create a layer of subcutaneous fat, protecting muscles and organs from superficial cuts. It's a strange form of armor. A squishy, slightly gassy shield. You squat, do your business, and rejoin the group for the daily inspections. The Lanista, the manager of your training school, walks the line like a silent storm cloud. He's lean, perpetually annoyed, and smells faintly of myrrh, probably to mask the constant odor of sweat and regret. He nods at you. You're in decent shape, by gladiator standards. That means no visible infections and both arms still attached. After roll call, you're sent off for endurance work, carrying water jugs across the yard, squatting under logs, dragging your partner through sand. It's all designed to make your body a living weapon. Just one fed on the dullest diet ever conceived. Midday pulses around again. You're not even hungry yet, but that doesn't matter. The cook rings a bell. Really just a dented bronze plate hung from a chain, and you all trudge back. This batch of pulls is slightly different again. It's got something. Not flavor, but a new smell. Acrid. You lift a spoonful and realize someone dropped an onion skin into the pot. Just one. You make sure to get a scoop from that side. Funny thing is, you used to hate onions. Too sharp, too pungent. Now, you'd propose marriage to an onion. A full, raw, unapologetic onion. Crunch and all. You eat slower this time, trying to stretch the experience. The grain is warm. The texture is familiar. You don't even hate it anymore. You just coexist with it, like an old roommate who never moves out. As you eat, you notice a new recruit across the room, wiry, sunburned, and holding his bowl like he's been handed a live frog. He takes a bite, chews, stops, takes another bite, chews longer, then looks around with the haunted expression of someone realizing this isn't temporary. Poor guy. Eventually, you speak. First time? He nods. Tastes like wall paste. That's an insult to walls. Later, during the break between drills, you lie on a cool patch of stone and stare at the sky. A bird passes overhead. You wonder what it eats. Bugs? Berries? Whatever it is, you envy it. You wonder if birds ever get bored of their food. Then you remember birds can fly. You, however, are tethered to poles like a moody ghost to its unfinished business. You overhear some of the older gladiators talking about sneaking into the town market on a supply run. One claimed he saw a wheel of cheese the size of a child. Sharp enough to make you cry. He said, reverently, you don't even like cheese that much. But now you're thinking about it. Thinking hard. It's funny. You're more obsessed with food now than when you were free. Back then, meals were background noise. Now, they're milestones. Something to look forward to. Something to measure time by. 3 bowls a day. 3 ways to remember you're still alive. The evening meal is served just before sunset. The day's drills have wrung you dry. Your tunic clings to your back. Your arms tremble as you lift your spoon. But you eat anyway. Because the only thing worse than barley porridge is nothing. There's a bit of gristle in this batch. Leftover legume husk maybe. Or a tiny pebble. You don't care. You chew. You swallow. You move on. By nightfall, the yard is quiet. You sit near the wall, resting your back, legs stretched out before you. The sky is a deepening violet. The stars not yet ready to show. Someone's telling a story about a senator's daughter who ran off with a gladiator. No one believes it, but everyone listens. You're full, in the way one gets used to. Not satisfied, not nourished, just full, like a sack of meal. The night air carries a breeze, and it rustles through your hair like a whisper. You close your eyes. The taste of barley still lingers in your mouth. It always does. Like a loyal dog, or a bad idea, you fall asleep to the distant clang of a hammer on metal. The creak of leather being stretched over a frame, and the knowledge that tomorrow, without fail, you'll wake up to more pulls. And somehow, you'll eat it. You wake before dawn. Again. It's not the rooster this time, it's your stomach. Not growling with hunger, but issuing a low, tired complaint. It's not upset, it's just over it. Over the routine, over the pulls, over the expectation that you'll accept this endless grain parade as if it were a noble sacrifice. But you do accept it, because there's no choice. You rise in the dark, stretch your arms until your shoulders pop like old wagon wheels, and make your way to the mess space where the fire's already glowing low under the cookpot. The cook must have started before anyone else. You suspect he never sleeps. Or maybe he sleeps in shifts. Like a watchman guarding a secret society of oats. Steam swirls up from the pot like lazy ghosts. Pulls. Again, of course. You dip your bowl in without hesitation now. Gone are the days of sniffing, hesitating, questioning. You've surrendered. You're one with the porridge. You sit down beside another familiar figure, Rufus. Called so because of his unfortunate sunburn that refuses to fade. He gives you a weary nod. Mouth already half full. Morning. You grunt. MMMPH. He replies, eloquently. This morning. The pulls has a slight chalky edge to it. Possibly overboiled. Possibly just your imagination rebelling again. You chew mechanically. Gaze fixed on the middle distance. The sunrise is gentle, painting the walls of the ludus in warm orange tones that make the stone look almost kind. It's a lie, but a beautiful one. As you eat, someone nearby makes a joke about the cook substituting the water with sweat. It gets a few tired chuckles. Humor here is rationed almost as tightly as olive oil. Still, there's a quiet camaraderie over these bowls of sameness. A strange fellowship forged by repetition. You all eat from the same pot, with the same spoons, by the same fire, and for the same reason, to be strong enough to survive the next day. You once asked a trainer if there was ever meat in the diet. He told you, Only when one of you dies. You're still not sure if he was joking. In truth, meat did appear in gladiator diets, but not regularly. It was often reserved for pre-fight days. As a temporary energy boost. A piece of pork here. A smear of liver there. Maybe even some salted fish if the Lannister was feeling generous or had a bet to win. But for everyday training, meat was seen as unnecessary. Even excessive. Too rich. Too indulgent. Too costly. Historians still argue whether gladiators' high-carb, low-fat diets were meant to maintain bulk or simply keep expenses down. Either way, you haven't seen anything resembling meat in weeks, maybe months. You wouldn't even know what to do with it anymore. You once heard a rumor that in the East, gladiators were fed exotic foods, roasted locusts, spiced lentils, honey-soaked dates. You're pretty sure it's nonsense. But you still dream about it sometimes. Especially the dates. Sweetness is a lost memory here. Mid-morning drills begin again, this time focused on precision strikes. Your wooden sword bruises your partner's shoulder for the third time. He swears, but it's half-hearted. Pain is just another morning ritual now. Like breathing, like swallowing. Your stomach sloshes with each lunge. The porridge now a slow-moving internal wave that buffers every step. You've gotten used to that too. During break, you sneak over to the fence and peer out toward the market road. A cart trundles by in the distance, pulled by a sleepy mule and loaded with crates of who knows what. The breeze carries a scent, faint but unmistakable. Garlic, real garlic. It cuts through the usual smell of dust and sweat like a dagger of memory. You close your eyes. For a second, you're not a gladiator. You're a boy again, watching your mother mash garlic with oil and vinegar in a cracked bowl. She used to call it poor man's gold. You never appreciated it then. Now, you'd fight a lion for a clove. By noon, you're back at the mess area for round 2. The midday pulse has thickened in the sun. It jiggles slightly in the bowl, like it's trying to escape. You stir it with your spoon, hoping for variety. No luck. This time, someone has sprinkled in some chopped greens, likely beet leaves or mustard tops. It's not flavor, exactly, but it's different. You take slow bites, savoring the texture. It's the closest thing to salad you'll ever get. Across the yard, one of the older fighters, Damus, leans back and mutters. Back in my first ludus, we used to get beans twice a week. Lentils, sometimes, one time, chickpeas. Everyone pauses. Chickpeas? You ask, were they cooked? Nope, he says, but still, you all nod solemnly. Raw chickpeas, a dream. In the grand scheme of Roman cuisine, legumes were common among the lower classes, including gladiators, chickpeas, lentils, fava beans. They showed up when barley didn't stretch far enough. Cheap, filling, and a little more forgiving on the taste buds. But today, it's still barley. Barley with the ghost of a mustard leaf. Afternoon training includes shield drills, which feel like being repeatedly hit in the ribs by an angry door. You start to notice how much you sweat, not just during the exercise, but all the time. The heat, the diet, the exertion, it's all conspiring to wring every drop of moisture from your body. You hear that Roman gladiators were sometimes given vinegar water to rehydrate. A kind of proto-sports drink, if you squint hard enough, called posca. It was cheap and slightly antiseptic, likely sour enough to make you feel alive again. You've had it, once. It tasted like disappointment and old coins. Evening comes. The third and final bowl of pulls arrives as shadows stretch long across the yard. This one's thinner, more like soup. You can tell the cook was running low on grain. Maybe someone stole a handful. Maybe he's hoarding it. You wouldn't blame him. You sip slowly, the warm broth sliding down your throat like borrowed time. Afterward, you sit in the twilight, polishing your sword with an old scrap of cloth. Not because it needs it, but because it gives your hands something to do. The others do the same. Quiet tasks, little rituals to end the day. A boy you don't recognize, probably a transfer from another ludus, sits down nearby and asks, "Do we ever get anything else? Like fruit?" You look at him. "No," you say, "but you'll dream about it." He laughs, nervously. Later, as the night falls and the stars finally blink open above, you lie on your back in the dirt and let your mind drift. You try to remember the taste of apples. The crunch, The juice. The way the sweetness clung to your teeth. You can't remember the last time you had one. You're not sure you ever will again. You fall asleep still tasting barley. Always barley. It's in your blood now. The night is still warm when you stir. Not from dreams, but from the familiar pressure in your gut. That barley bloat again. You roll onto your side and stare at the wall, watching shadows twitch from torchlight. Someone's snoring, possibly Flaccus, whose wheezy inhalations sound like a bellows losing a fight with a cat. You try to go back to sleep. You shift, you sigh, but that vague, unsettled fullness stays with you. A reminder that 3 bowls of grain and 1 ladle of hot water do not equal peace. Eventually, you give up and sit up on your cot. Your joints crack like old timber. You rub your belly, hoping it might negotiate. It does not. Here's something no fresco ever shows: the less glamorous side of ancient digestion. You and your fellow gladiators all suffer from it. Constantly. You'd think the human body would adapt after weeks, months, of the same thing. But nope. Barley isn't merciful. It's fibrous. It's dense. It's stubborn. You shuffle to the latrine trench in the dark. No line this time. Just the sounds of distant dogs barking and the soft trickle of. Let's not dwell on it. You crouch. You reflect. This is the least heroic part of being a gladiator, but probably the most frequent. Historians still debate whether these communal facilities were hygienic by Roman standards or just cleverly designed disease factories. The Romans loved their public toilets. Some even had seating for 30. With decorative mosaics. But here, in the ludus, it's more of a trench and hope setup. You return to bed a little lighter, but not happier. You pull your tunic tighter and try to focus on the stars peeking in through a gap in the roof. You imagine constellations shaped like fruit, a peach, an olive, maybe even a fish on a plate. It's absurd, but your brain is hungry for anything that isn't grain-based. Eventually, sleep comes. Morning again. This time, you rise to the rhythmic thudding of wood on wood, practice weapons clashing in the yard. Someone couldn't wait for drills to start. You groan. Your body feels like yesterday's laundry, wrung out, damp, and vaguely sour. You trudge to breakfast. Bowl, ladle, pulls. Today's batch is overcooked. A sort of beige cement. It has formed a light skin on top, which breaks apart reluctantly as you stir. There's no smell, no spice, just the heavy warmth of sustenance. You chew slowly, your brain half asleep. Across the room, 2 fighters are arguing. Something about whether barley is worse than millet. You don't even engage. That debate never ends. What's strange is that barley wasn't always considered poor man's food. In fact, ancient Greek athletes used it as part of their training regimens. Barley was the protein shake of the classical world, if you squint really hard and lower your expectations. The Roman take was similar. It gave stamina, bulk, and endurance, which is exactly what you're being bred for. They even had a nickname for you: hordery, barley men. That's not a compliment, by the way. That's a dietary insult wrapped in a toga. You notice your arms in the morning light. Not sculpted, not lean, thick, puffy, even. That's the barley talking. It bulks you out, keeps you heavy, makes the audience think you're powerful, even if half that mass is pure digestive resistance. Your trainer likes it. Big men fall harder, he says. Crowds cheer louder. You would argue that point. But he's built like a clay oven and doesn't respond well to sarcasm. Training begins. You lift a wooden sword heavier than some real ones. You swing until your shoulders ache. You parry. You take a hit. You fall. You get up. Water break. Then back to it. The sweat clings. The flies join the party. Lunch. You hope for something different. You get barley. Again. This time in cake form. Barley mashed. Pressed. Grilled. It has the texture of stale polenta and the personality of wet socks. Sometimes, the cooks try to change it up with lentils. But lentils just give you a different kind of bloat. Less dense. More musical. You eat it anyway. Because not eating means weakness. Weakness means getting picked for the next fight. And not everyone comes back from those. There's a rumor that one of the older gladiators got a fig once. A single fig, given to him by a visiting noble who thought it was poetic or generous. He cried, apparently, just sat there with juice on his chin. sobbing into his fists like someone watching the end of a tragic play. You'd cry too. Afternoons are for drills. You practice rolling, dodging, standing still while someone screams in your face about posture. You start to wonder if figs are even real or just a story you invented to cope. The heat climbs. Your stomach protests. It's not just that the food is boring, it's how it wears on your mind. How sameness becomes a kind of mental rot. You crave variety not for taste, but for the reminder that change is possible. That life isn't a loop of barley-flavored déjà vu. One of the younger trainees tries to sneak a bite of something else, an egg from the cook's basket. He's caught, not punished harshly, just denied food for the night, which is arguably worse. Later, you lie in your cot again, belly full but spirit empty. You start naming your digestive noises. Just for entertainment, there's Percy, the gurgle, Hector, the ominous rumble, and Tiny Aurelius, the small polite one that sounds like a frog whispering. This is what gladiators do when the fighting stops. Your dreams that night are vivid. You chase a chicken through a marble courtyard. It mocks you in Latin. You catch it, and it turns into a loaf of barley bread. You cry. Everyone claps. You wake up with your face stuck to the straw mat. Another day begins. The same smells, the same voices, the same bowl. You wonder if somewhere, deep below Rome, there's a forgotten vault with spices, cinnamon, cumin, pepper, just waiting to be discovered and dumped into your next meal like some kind of flavor miracle. You chuckle softly. Even dreaming of spice feels decadent. You wake to a strange sensation. Your stomach doesn't hurt. You blink at the ceiling, unsure whether you've entered some alternate reality. No pulsing cramps, no tight lump of undigested barley threatening revolt. Just emptiness. It's almost disorienting. But before you can enjoy it, the breakfast bell clangs, and the familiar dread seeps back in. You shuffle with the others, wooden bowls in hand, toward the steaming pot. This time, they've done something radical. The pulse has chopped onions. You stare at it like it might blink back. It's not flavor, exactly, but it's variety. The chopped pieces float like pale confetti in the mush, and the smell, sharp and sulfurous, brings a moment of weird gratitude. You glance around. A few others are sniffing at their bowls too, cautiously optimistic, like they've discovered a secret ingredient in an ancient potion. You eat slowly. The onion adds texture, a tiny crunch against the monotonous sludge. Someone across the room lets out a dramatic like they're dining at a temple feast. It gets a laugh. You're all hungry for more than food. After breakfast, your squad heads to the training field. The instructor decides today's lesson is shield work. That means standing in the sun holding a ridiculously heavy piece of curved wood while someone hits it with increasing frustration. Your arm burns within minutes. The instructor yells something about core stability. You wonder how stable your core can be when it's anchored by 8 pounds of barley cement. A fly lands on your cheek. You let it sit. As you rotate through drills, a new conversation bubbles among the ranks. Someone's heard of a gladiator school out in Capua that serves fish. Actual fish, with salt. It's probably a lie, or a cruel test, but it spreads like a spark through dry straw. Salted fish? One guy whispers like he's talking about buried treasure. It's for champions, someone else says. Only the best get it. This prompts a whole debate about ranking systems. Are you judged by skill? By crowd reaction? By sheer survival? Historians still argue whether elite gladiators were regularly rewarded with superior meals, or if that's just revisionist wishful thinking with a sprinkle of ancient PR. All you know is that fish sounds impossibly luxurious. Protein, oil, flavor. You once saw a sardine in the gutter outside the amphitheater. You thought about picking it up before a stray dog got to it first. That's your nutritional bar these days. Dog rejected gutter fish. Back in the barracks that afternoon, a visitor arrives. A medicus, Roman doctor, sent by the magistrate to inspect gladiator wellness. You almost laugh. He looks overwhelmed the moment he steps inside. The smell alone, sweat, moldy tunics, wet straw, is enough to trigger a diagnosis. He pokes around, lifting blankets, glancing into bowls, asking questions like, "How often do you defecate?" You answer honestly, and he just nods with the haunted look of a man who's seen too much. Later, he gives a short lecture about balanced nutrition. He uses words like vitaminum and mineralus, though you're not entirely convinced he knows what they mean. He recommends beans, fruits, olive oil. You look at your dinner, a barley cake, and wonder if he's pranking you. There's no olive oil here. The closest you've come to fruit is a dried date you found under your cot 2 weeks ago. You ate it anyway. It was chewy and tasted like old socks. But you still dream about it. The medicus leaves with a hasty farewell and no follow-up. You suspect he's going to write a scroll titled Barley Madness, a study in nutritional cruelty. Dinner is, of course, barley again, with lentils. You don't even groan this time. You just chew. Later that night, while oil lamps flicker and someone plays a half-hearted tune on a reed pipe, you reflect on your diet like a philosopher. Is it bad because it's repetitive? Or is it bad because it reminds you how little control you have? Either way, you're stuck in a cycle. Like the moon, or laundry. There's a guy in your unit named Pollux. He claims his uncle was a grain merchant. Pollux knows way too much about cereal varieties. You ask him, out of curiosity, why the trainers won't feed you wheat instead of barley. Too expensive, he says with a shrug. Wheat is for citizens. Bread, pastry, luxury food. Barley's for beasts, he adds, stuffing another bite into his mouth. And us. It's a sobering thought. You share a menu with horses. He tells you the Roman army also uses barley as punishment rations. When soldiers mess up, they get what you get every day. That explains your morale. The next morning, you decide to sneak a peek in the storage area. Just to see what's there. You're not planning a heist, more of a tour. There's a strong scent of grain. Big sacks of it stacked high like brown clouds. A few amphorae marked with symbols, wine, vinegar, oil. A rat scurries by. You envy its freedom. You hear a noise and retreat before anyone sees you. Back at the training yard. It's sparring day. That means bruises. Maybe a loose tooth if things go sideways. Your partner is a guy twice your size who smells like onions and fear. He doesn't hold back. The first blow rattles your ribs. You grunt. Barley churns. Round 2. You duck just in time. Your revenge comes in the form of a solid whack to his thigh. He yelps. You both grin. By midday, your muscles are jelly and your tunic sticks to you like wet parchment. Lunch is served. Can you guess? It's barley, but cold barley, which somehow makes it worse. There's a kind of stale despair to cold mush. No aroma, no comfort, just lumps and resentment. Someone tries to make a joke, hey, at least it's gluten-free, but no one knows what gluten is. The joke dies in the humidity. That night, Pollux tells a tale about a gladiator in Gaul who escaped and became a cook. He opened a tavern. He says, serves pork with honey and mustard. You imagine that, a plate steaming with meat, sweet sauce dripping down the edges, bread on the side, wine. It's too much. Your brain short-circuits with longing. You lie awake for hours. The fan of your breath against your arm. The itch of straw. The sourness in your mouth. Everything feels barley-flavored. You make a pact with yourself. If you survive the next bout, you'll find a lemon, even if it costs a week's pay. You'll eat it whole, rind and all, just to taste something. The first thing you notice is the sound. A dull metallic thump, like someone dropped a helmet onto wet stone. It echoes once, then silence. You crack one eye open. It's still dark, just before dawn. The barracks are motionless except for a few snores and the occasional creak of someone turning over. Then the thump comes again. Louder, closer. You sit up, heart mildly annoyed rather than alarmed. Turns out someone dropped a pot. A kitchen slave curses under his breath and starts scraping lentils off the stone floor. Lentils, not exactly worth mourning, but they were probably your breakfast. You lie back, staring at the thatched ceiling, thinking about lentils in a way no human should. The small, bland, beige kind, soft when boiled, tasteless when cold, marginally better than nothing. You remember a time, vaguely, when lentils were a choice. A side dish, maybe mixed with garlic or pepper. These days, they're a distant cousin to joy. Still, when they appear beside your barley, you feel almost festive. By the time you're up and dressed, the pot situation is resolved. Breakfast proceeds as planned. A generous scoop of lukewarm pulse. Mushier than yesterday's. Served with a smear of crushed lentils on top. Think of it as ancient Roman, two-texture cuisine. You eat it all, even lick the bowl. The schedule says, strength training. Which is code for, more pain than you agreed to. You lift weights. Stone-filled baskets strapped to wooden poles. And walk in circles while a trainer shouts helpful things like, don't drop it or I'll drop you. You sweat. You ache. And all the while, your brain keeps doing math. If I burned 1.200 calories today, and I ate about 600 of bland sludge, then technically, I'm shrinking. Congratulations. You are actively starving in a professional sports program. Historians still argue whether this level of caloric imbalance was intentional or just logistical incompetence. Maybe trainers thought hunger would sharpen your instincts. Or maybe they just didn't care. You care. Because by midday, your stomach sounds like a growling dog. Lunch is more barley. Molded into cakes this time. Slightly charred. A culinary twist. Adds depth. Someone jokes. Tastes like regret. You answer. You chew anyway. Each bite a meditation in perseverance. Someone offers you a dried fig. And you accept it like it's a holy relic. It's chewy. Yes. But it has sugar. You could weep. During the afternoon sparring session. You're paired with a rookie. Barely older than a kid. Eyes wide with nervous energy. He fumbles his grip on the wooden sword. And you go easy on him. Mostly. But in your brief breaks between rounds, the food topic returns. Did you hear? The kid says. They fed oysters to some fighters in Pompeii? You blink. Oysters? Yeah. He nods quickly. The rich kind. Straight from the coast. Someone said they help with stamina. You raise an eyebrow. You sure it wasn't poison? No, he insists. Special diet. For crowd favorites. Oysters. Salty. Silky. Slippery little treasures served raw. You imagine yourself biting into one. Your modern brain confused whether it's a delicacy or a dare. Then again, when your daily protein is approximately half a lentil, anything with flavor sounds miraculous. As the heat wanes and the sun leans west, the conversation in the barracks shifts to supplements. Yes, even in ancient times. Turns out, there's a chalky drink they give you once a week. A kind of restorative mix. It's mostly vinegar and ground bone. Pollux says it's for your joints and recovery. You suspect it's just old medical wisdom dressed as a beverage. The vinegar makes it bitey. The ground bone makes it sandy. Still, you drink every drop. Some historians think this early sports nutrition was the real secret to gladiator endurance. Others suggest it was just a cheap way to recycle carcasses. Either way, it's gritty, and it coats your teeth like chalk. You spend the next hour wondering if your molars are getting stronger or just being replaced by powdered cow. Dinner arrives in a procession of pots. Steam rises. Someone whispers, "It smells different tonight." And it does. Not good, necessarily, but different. Turns out, the cook has added garum. Ah yes, garum. The Roman answer to flavor. A fermented fish sauce that tastes like what it sounds like. Imagine bottling the smell of low tide, letting it age in the sun and then drizzling it over everything. Tonight's barley stew is kissed with it. Just enough to make you notice. Just enough to wrinkle your nose and think, is this better? You can't decide. The veteran next to you is grinning. That's how you know the magistrate's visiting tomorrow. He says, they always flavor the food before a visit. That makes sense. Can't have visiting officials thinking you're eating gruel flavored with sorrow. No. Tonight you dine like kings, fishy, salty kings. You wonder, briefly, if the magistrate will eat with you. Spoiler. He won't. Later that night, someone pulls out a board and starts a game of Latrunculi, Roman chess. More or less, you play while gnawing on the crust of your barley cake, which now has the consistency of ceramic. Someone wins. Someone sulks. You're too tired to care. As you lie down, belly full of vaguely oceanic mush, your mind wanders to another rumor. There's a gladiator up north who writes letters home, and in one, he described a miracle fruit he received from a fan. A pomegranate. You picture it now. Round, deep red, bursting with tart little seeds. You've never had one, but your brain conjures a version anyway. Sweet, juicy, slightly crunchy. Don't think about food. You whisper to yourself. You close your eyes. Then someone across the room mutters in his sleep, "Honey roasted almonds." And it's over. You're awake for another hour. The next day, you vow to stop fantasizing. You focus during drills. You nod during the medicus's brief appearance. You even tolerate the smell of the vinegar bone shake without gagging. But then, right before lunch, something extraordinary happens. A trainer walks in holding a small basket. In it, apples. Actual apples. Small, bruised, a little mealy, but real, red and round. The kind of thing poets compare cheeks to, or gods use as bribes. There are only enough for a few. A competition is announced. Quick sparring matches. Winner gets a fruit. It's chaos. You participate, of course. You jab, duck, pivot, block. You feel something primal uncoil in you. Not glory, not pride, hunger. You don't win, but you land second place. The trainer smirks and tosses you half an apple. You bite in. It's tart, sharp, a little mushy. It might as well be ambrosia. Even if a worm's living inside, and let's be honest, probably is, you'd still eat it. Every bite reminds you of the idea of food. The bright, beautiful variety of it, not just texture, not just calories, but joy. A bite of apple gives you more life than a week of barley. That night, you sleep better. Your dreams taste like cider and roasted seeds. Morning breaks with an odd quietness. Like the world is holding its breath. You shuffle out of the barracks, feeling the ache from yesterday's drills still clinging to your muscles like a bad hangover. That apple you nibbled last night is a lingering memory of sweetness, a luxury in this sea of monotony. You join the line for breakfast, where the usual dull meal waits for you. Porridge thick with barley and a splash of watered-down wine, which they insist aids digestion. You think it mostly just makes you dizzy. The cook ladles it out with practiced precision, eyes flicking to the new batch of recruits like a hawk looking for weak spots. Today, your training shifts focus from brute strength to endurance. You trudge to the arena's training grounds, a dusty patch surrounded by crumbling marble columns and the faint scent of smoke and sweat hanging in the air. You squint against the sun, which feels more like a mocking spotlight than a source of warmth. A trainer hands you a wooden sword, its grain rough against your skin. You begin shadow sparring, moving through slow, deliberate strikes and parries. It's repetitive, almost hypnotic. Your arms start to tire, but your mind drifts instead to the strange food rumors buzzing among the gladiators. There's talk of a secret energy potion brewed by a particular medicus, a concoction involving chickpeas, honey, and some sort of fermented grape juice. Supposedly, it gives fighters a burst of stamina and sharpens their reflexes. You wrinkle your nose at the thought of fermented grape juice. Last time you tasted vinegar, it was nearly enough to make you throw up. Historians still argue whether these potions actually existed or if they were just tall tales spread by bored fighters desperate for hope. Some suggest these stories were ancient PR, gladiators wanting to seem almost superhuman to impress the crowds. Speaking of the crowd, you recall that the biggest matches happen in the afternoon, when the sun's heat is at its peak and the stands are packed with thousands. Your stomach twists, not from nerves, but hunger. The amphitheater's shadows offer no relief from the gnawing emptiness inside. At midday, the mess tent offers its usual fare: boiled cabbage, a handful of unsalted chickpeas, and more of that barley porridge. You glance sideways at your companions. Some are already picking at the food, others pretending they're full. No one talks much. Hunger makes people taciturn. In a rare break from routine, the medicus arrives, carrying a small pouch filled with herbs. He tells you to chew these before matches to prevent cramps and cleanse the blood. The taste is bitter and grassy, like chewing on the garden after a rainstorm. Later, during your rest, you overhear a conversation between two seasoned fighters about the dietary habits of the gladiators in Capua, where some are reportedly given more meat, goat or beef, than you've seen in weeks. You wonder if you're just unlucky or if your trainer is particularly stingy. The rumors grow wilder. Someone claims that during the festival of Saturnalia, some gladiators receive feasts with fresh fish, olives, and even pastries. You imagine biting into flaky, honey-drizzled bread, but it feels like a fairy tale whispered on the wind. After training, You limp back to the barracks. Muscles protesting each step. Your mind returns to the day's potion talk. If only there were a way to brew stamina. A magic elixir to dull the hunger and dull the ache. That night, as the barracks settle into silence, a fellow gladiator pulls out a small bundle wrapped in cloth. Inside are dried figs, dates, and a few almonds, gifts from a wealthy patron. He breaks the stash into tiny pieces and shares them. The sweetness is a stark contrast to the usual blandness. You savor the fruit, each bite a small rebellion against the relentless routine. Sleep finds you slower tonight, your body reluctant to let go of the brief taste of sweetness and the fleeting hope it brought. You wake slowly, your body stiff from yesterday's exertions and last night's restless sleep, punctuated by dreams of figs and honeyed bread. The cool morning air feels sharp in your lungs as you step outside. The training grounds are already alive with murmurs and the clatter of wooden swords. The day's exercise is different. Instead of brutal sparring or weightlifting, today is dedicated to diet and digestion. Yes, you heard that right. The training program includes lessons on what and how gladiators eat. A grizzled trainer stands before you, holding a small bowl of coarse wheat grains. Fuel for the body, he says with a dry chuckle. But not just any fuel. The right fuel. He talks about the gladiator's diet, a mostly vegetarian regimen heavy in grains and legumes, with an occasional splash of wine and rare meat. You've been living this diet for months now, but hearing it explained feels almost like a confession. You are what you eat, and sometimes what you don't. He emphasizes the importance of slow, careful chewing, warning that eating too fast could lead to cramps or worse, a poor performance in the arena. You find yourself nodding, even though you've been eating as fast as possible for months just to silence the growling in your gut. The trainer then produces a clay tablet with a crudely etched list of foods considered beneficial: barley, beans, chickpeas, figs, and something called silphium. You lean in. Silphium? It sounds like a spell or a potion. Turns out, silphium was an ancient herb prized across the Mediterranean, now sadly extinct, thought to aid digestion and even act as a contraceptive. Imagine that. The gladiator's diet including herbal birth control. It's one of those quirky facts that make you wonder how many other ancient secrets are lost to time. As you listen, the trainer gestures toward the amphory filled with olive oil. He explains that some fighters were allowed to add small amounts to their meals for flavor and energy. You're struck by the irony. Olive oil, a symbol of Mediterranean luxury, rationed like gold for you and your comrades. Later, as you wander toward the communal latrine, you catch a whiff of something familiar: smoke and spices. It's coming from the cook's tent, where a small group of gladiators is gathered, whispering about a new recipe involving lentils and cumin. You lean in, and someone passes you a small bowl of the concoction. It's surprisingly tasty, earthy, warm, with a hint of heat. You wonder if this spicy lentil mash might be the culinary highlight of your week. Historians still argue whether gladiators were really the vegetarian athletes described in some ancient texts or if these accounts were romanticized by later writers. After all, in a society where meat was a luxury, it makes sense that the fighters subsisted mostly on grains and legumes. The afternoon brings more sparring, and you notice your limbs feel lighter. Maybe it's the cumin, or maybe your mind is playing tricks on you. Hungry for hope and flavor, you're paired with a veteran named Dax, whose calm precision makes you feel like an amateur every time you swing. Despite your fatigue, you hold your own, blocking his strikes and landing a few blows. During a break, Dax tells you about the occasional feast days when the Lanista trainer would reward you with a meal of boiled meat and wine. Those days were few, and the memory of them sweet. You ask if he remembers what it tasted like. Like freedom, he says with a grin, and a brief rest from hunger. As the sun dips low, you return to the barracks, stomach still rumbling but spirit slightly lifted. You sit with a few comrades and share stories of food, real food, from before this life. Dates, olives, roasted nuts, fresh bread hot from the oven. You realize that food, beyond nourishment, is memory, and memory is survival. Tonight, as you lie down to rest, you think about silphium, cumin, and lentils, about smoky spices and the taste of freedom. Your stomach may still grumble, but your mind feels a little fuller. The sun has barely risen when you are roused from a restless sleep by the familiar clanging of armor and distant shouts. Your body protests at the early hour, but you know the day ahead is demanding. The routine doesn't wait for convenience. As you step outside, the smell of damp earth mixed with sweat and stale bread lingers in the cool morning air. Your feet crunch against scattered straw and broken pottery shards, a reminder of the arena's long history beneath your soles. The walls echo with the ghosts of past battles, silent spectators of your ongoing struggle. Today's focus is recovery and nutrition, or, as much as such concepts exist in this brutal world. The Lanista, a burly man with a face as weathered as the arena stones, beckons you toward the mess tent. He holds a simple clay bowl, filled with a thick, grayish paste that looks more like mud than food. This, he announces with a wink, is your post-training ration, Gladiator's ash. You blink, trying to suppress a grimace. The so-called ash is actually a mixture of ashes from charred wood combined with vinegar and barley flour. Sounds like a stomach ache waiting to happen, but it's believed to aid in healing and replenishing the body's minerals after intense exertion. The strange blend reminds you of an odd fact you read once. Some gladiators were called hordery, meaning barley men, because their diets were based heavily on barley and plant-based foods. And they reportedly had stronger bones than the average Roman citizen. That's right, the tough guys were the vegetarians. It's a bit of a plot twist in the gladiator diet story. Later, as you rest beneath the shade of an olive tree, your mind wanders to the practice of consuming ashes. It seems bizarre today, but historians still argue whether this was a medicinal tradition rooted in actual health benefits or just a desperate ritual born of superstition and limited knowledge. Your thoughts are interrupted by the arrival of the medicus, who hands out small bundles of herbs and dried fruits. He tells you to eat these slowly, warning that digestion is key to survival, not just in the arena but in daily life. He mutters something about restoring the humors, a concept that feels as old as the empire itself. You nibble on the bitter herbs and sweet figs, feeling the contrast dance on your tongue. Despite the bitterness, there is a soothing quality, a tiny comfort in the routine. By midday, the sun blazes overhead, and you find yourself in the arena's shade, sparring lightly to avoid overexertion. Your opponent is a younger recruit, eager but inexperienced. His strikes lack finesse, but his enthusiasm is contagious, and you catch yourself smiling despite the heat. During a pause, you share some of your dried figs and herbs with him. He thanks you with wide eyes, as if you've handed him a treasure. Moments like this remind you that camaraderie, small kindnesses, are as vital as any diet or training regimen. The afternoon brings a welcome change, a visit from a wealthy patron who gifts the gladiators with fresh olives and bread. The simple food tastes divine, a stark contrast to the daily ration of porridge and chickpeas. You bite into the bread, the crust crackling under your teeth, the crumbs soft and warm. It's a fleeting taste of luxury, a reminder that beyond the arena walls lies a world of abundance. As the day wanes, you think about how the gladiators' diet was a patchwork of scarcity and occasional indulgence, balanced precariously by superstition, necessity, and tradition. You wonder how many of your predecessors dreamed of feasts like this while chewing on the same coarse barley porridge that fills your belly tonight. Lying on your straw mattress later, the taste of olives lingering, you drift into sleep thinking about ash and figs, bread and kindness, strange companions on your journey as a gladiator. The dawn barely breaks when you are already rolling out of your straw pallet, joints creaking like the old wooden gates of the training yard. The sun's first light filters through cracks in the barracks walls, casting long shadows that seem to stretch and yawn along with you. Today, the training shifts focus again, from endurance and recovery to diet experimentation. Yes, it turns out your Lanista is as obsessed with what you eat as how you swing that sword. You gather with the others around a low wooden table where a modest pile of food awaits: coarse bread, boiled lentils, some dried figs, and a small flask of vinegar mixed with honey. The Lanista explains this is an ancient remedy, said to boost strength and resilience. You pop a piece of the honeyed vinegar into your mouth. It's sour and sweet at once, a confusing flavor that makes your tongue tingle. You're reminded of a peculiar fact. Roman gladiators were sometimes called hordery, or barley men, because barley was the staple of their diet. Rather than meat as movies tend to suggest. As you chew, the Lannister recounts tales of gladiators who refused meat entirely, thriving on vegetables, grains, and legumes alone. This clashes with the popular image of muscle-bound fighters fueled by steaks. But historians still argue whether such vegetarianism was common or an anomaly among the gladiator ranks. After the brief meal, you head to the training ground where you begin your drills. Today's session involves fighting in heavy armor, testing both your stamina and your ability to endure discomfort. The weight of the armor is oppressive, pressing down on your shoulders and making every move sluggish. Sweat trickles beneath the metal, mingling with dust and grime. It's a brutal reminder that strength is about more than muscle, it's about patience and willpower. During a short break, you notice a fellow gladiator nursing a blistered foot. He jokes about how the constant marching and sparring is harder on the body than any opponent in the arena. You laugh, though the pain is real, a constant shadow in this life. In between bouts, you return to thoughts of food. You overhear the camp cook whispering about a secret ingredient added to the gladiator's stew, something that tastes like licorice but is said to improve digestion. It's likely a sophetida, a resin used in ancient times as a spice and medicine, though some joked it smelled worse than a gladiator's helmet after a fight. The rumor feels like a small rebellion against the dull diet, a splash of flavor in the otherwise gray routine. You wonder how many flavors have been lost to time. What dishes once brought joy to warriors like you but now exist only in dusty scrolls or whispered stories? As the sun climbs higher, the training intensifies. You are paired with a quick-footed opponent who darts and weaves like a desert serpent, forcing you to stay light on your feet despite the cumbersome armor. Your breath comes in ragged gasps, but you hold your ground. You remember the honeyed vinegar and the figs from breakfast, they linger on your tongue, fueling you more than you expected. At the end of the day, you slump back to the barracks, body heavy but spirit stubbornly alive. The evening meal is the usual barley porridge and boiled vegetables, bland but filling. Before sleep, you share stories with a comrade about the strangest foods you've encountered in your time here. Everything from fermented fish sauces to spiced wine and even the occasional fig-filled pastry gifted by a wealthy fan. It's clear that while your diet is repetitive, the desire for variety and taste is never far from your mind. You close your eyes, imagining the flavors of distant feasts, clinging to the hope that someday your meals will taste like freedom. The sun barely peeks over the horizon as you roll out of your thin straw bedding. The chill of early morning biting into your skin, you can hear the distant murmur of trainers preparing the day's drills, their voices mixing with the soft rustle of the wind through olive branches. It's another day in the relentless grind of the gladiator's life, where every moment is measured by sweat and survival. Today's focus is unusual: hydration and its role in the gladiator's endurance. You shuffle to the water trough, rubbing the sleep from your eyes, and take a long, deliberate sip. The water tastes faintly of iron, a reminder that even your basic nourishment carries the earth itself. The Lannister gathers the men around and begins a lecture on the importance of water mixed with vinegar, posca, a sour drink favored by soldiers and gladiators alike. You watch as a fellow fighter downs a cupful, grimacing but acknowledging the invigorating effect. Posca, they say, was both a thirst quencher and a mild disinfectant, thought to protect against disease in unsanitary conditions. A practical elixir rather than a luxury beverage. Historians still argue whether posca was consumed regularly by gladiators or if it was mainly a soldier's staple later romanticized in tales. Either way, the idea of drinking vinegar isn't exactly appealing, yet it's your current reality. After the lesson, you are sent to the arena to spar lightly, conserving your strength for the grueling afternoon drills. The heat of the day builds slowly, and you notice the sweat dripping down your back, salt stinging your eyes. Your body protests, but your mind is surprisingly clear, perhaps thanks to the hydration regimen. During a break, you exchange stories with a teammate about the strange culinary quirks of the gladiator's world. One mentions a remedy involving cabbage leaves applied to bruises and swelling, a vegetable both humble and revered for its healing properties. You recall reading that cabbage was considered a muscle builder in ancient times, believed to reduce fatigue and even improve eyesight, though that last claim remains debated among scholars. You ponder how much of the gladiator's diet and medicine was a mix of practical knowledge and hopeful superstition. A cocktail of science and belief brewed under the harsh Roman sun. Later, as the shadows lengthen, you return to the barracks, where the evening meal awaits. A bowl of thick porridge dotted with dried fruits and a drizzle of honey. The sweetness is subtle but comforting, a quiet reward after a long day of exertion. You watch as the others eat in near silence, the weight of exhaustion settling over the group like a heavy cloak. There's a calm in this shared ritual, a moment of peace amid the constant struggle. As you lie down to rest, your thoughts drift to the ancient herbs and humble foods that sustain you, the vinegar in your water, the cabbage on your wounds, the barley that fills your belly. They are more than mere sustenance, they are the quiet backbone of your survival. Your eyelids grow heavy, the distant sounds of the camp fading into the soft hum of night. You let yourself sink into the darkness, knowing tomorrow will bring its own challenges, but also the same unyielding routine that has become your strange new normal. Morning light filters through the narrow slits of the barracks, casting thin beams that dance on the dust motes swirling in the air. You sit up slowly, muscles still aching from yesterday's sparring. The taste of stale bread and vinegar lingers faintly in your mouth, reminders of the bland sustenance that defines your days. Today's focus shifts to the delicate art of food preparation, or rather, the surprisingly unglamorous process behind the gladiator diet. You trudge toward the makeshift kitchen, where the cook, a grizzled old man with a permanent scowl, is already stirring a large cauldron of thick porridge. You catch a whiff of the concoction, a mix of barley, water, and occasionally a handful of chickpeas or lentils for protein. It's bland, almost medicinal, but it's fuel. You remind yourself that the average Roman citizen's diet wasn't much more varied. Despite the empire's vastness and wealth, there's a faint hum of conversation among the cooks about garum, the infamous fermented fish sauce the Romans loved to add to nearly everything. You wrinkle your nose, imagining the pungent, salty liquid slathered over your porridge. Some gladiators reportedly preferred it to spice up their meals, but you wonder how common that was. Given the scarcity of such luxury items in your camp, historians still debate how widely garum was actually used among gladiators versus the wealthier classes, with some suggesting it was more of a culinary myth than a daily staple. As you ladle out your portion, a fellow fighter mentions a curious practice. Some gladiators would drink a mixture of milk and ashes after combat, believing it helped heal wounds and fortify bones. You recall this odd remedy from earlier tales but never imagined trying it yourself. You swallow your thick porridge slowly, the texture gritty and the taste dull, yet somehow reassuring in its consistency. Training today is light, focusing on technique rather than brute force, giving your body a chance to digest and recover. During a lull, you chat quietly with your comrades, sharing stories of strange foods from home. Some speak of hearty stews and fresh fruits, others of tough, dried meats and hard cheeses. The contrast between those memories and your current diet feels stark, but there's a strange comfort in the shared experience of your limited meals. It binds you to the others, a small community forged by hunger and hardship. Later, as the sun dips low, the camp is quieter, the usual clamor replaced by the soft sounds of settling dust and distant night birds. You wash down your evening porridge with a sip of water, the blandness now oddly soothing. Lying down on your straw bedding, you think about the simplicity of your diet, not glamorous, not exciting, but it keeps you alive. And in a way, that's all that matters. Your eyes close gently, the rhythm of your breath syncing with the fading light, ready to face whatever tomorrow's grind will bring. You wake to the faint, rhythmic clatter of wooden practice swords meeting shields. The sun is just a glow beyond the horizon, softening the camp's rugged outlines into blurry silhouettes. The air is cooler this morning, carrying a faint scent of dust and crushed olive leaves. Your stomach grumbles in protest. Today's breakfast is the usual, coarse barley porridge sweetened with a drizzle of honey and scattered dried figs. It's not much, but the sweet notes perk up your senses and momentarily distract from the hunger gnawing at your gut. The Lanista announces that today you'll learn about the gladiator's post-fight diet, how to help your battered body recover after the brutal contest in the arena. You trudge along behind the group to the small herb garden tucked away behind the barracks. Here, you see rows of plants, fennel, rue, coriander, and something that looks like a scraggly patch of parsley. The Lanista explains that gladiators were given herbal infusions believed to soothe pain and aid healing. Some plants, like rue, were thought to reduce inflammation, while others might have been more symbolic than medicinal. Historians still argue whether these herbal remedies were genuinely effective or if their use was more about boosting morale and creating rituals around recovery. You watch a comrade chew on a fennel leaf. Wincing but hopeful, you try a small nibble yourself. It's bitter, with a faintly sweet aftertaste that lingers on your tongue. It's unlike anything you'd consider food. Yet here it is, part of your daily reality. After the herbal lesson, the training intensifies. You sweat through drills with a heavy wooden sword, feeling the strain in your shoulders and forearms. The exertion sharpens your appetite. But lunch remains the predictable barley and lentil stew, punctuated by a dash of salt and sometimes a spoonful of garam sauce. The stew is bland but hearty, filling the hollow spaces inside you and preparing you for the afternoon's matches. You can't help but think how little this diet resembles the lavish banquets you've heard of at the villas of the elite, though perhaps those banquets had their own hidden downsides. During a brief rest, you overhear a conversation about salsamenta, preserved fish and meats used as protein supplements. Some gladiators had access to these rarer foods, but most relied on the humble grains and vegetables. This sparks a debate in your mind. How did nutrition vary between different gladiator schools and social ranks? The answer remains a murky mystery. As evening falls, you feel the familiar ache in your muscles, a dull reminder of the day's labor. You sip on a small bowl of warm water mixed with honey and vinegar, the camp's standard restorative drink, before settling onto your bedding. The day closes with a shared silence. The world outside reduced to soft night sounds and the slow, steady breathing of your comrades. You close your eyes, the herbal bitterness still faint on your tongue, ready to drift off with the quiet hope of a stronger tomorrow. The morning sun cuts sharper today, pouring golden light through the narrow camp windows and igniting the dust motes into a tiny galaxy floating in the air. You sit up slowly, limbs stiff but your mind alert, already anticipating the day ahead. Breakfast is the usual, thick porridge made from barley, with the occasional crushed chickpeas stirred in for protein. Today, however, your portion comes with an extra handful of crushed almonds, a rare treat that adds a subtle crunch and a nutty flavor. It's a small luxury, but it feels like a glimpse of something richer, something beyond the monotonous grind. You make your way to the training ground, where the Lanista has gathered the group to discuss the controversial role of meat in a gladiator's diet. Contrary to popular belief, gladiators were mostly vegetarian. Their primary diet consisted of grains, legumes, and vegetables, designed to build a layer of fat protecting them in combat. Historians still debate the extent to which gladiators consumed meat, with some suggesting the wealthiest might have had access to more protein, while others argue that meat was too expensive and rare for regular consumption. Your trainer elaborates on how the diet was carefully calibrated to balance strength and agility, avoiding excess muscle bulk that could slow a fighter down. You're reminded of the irony. Your bulkier opponent yesterday, though impressive, seemed slower on his feet, a potential disadvantage. Mid-morning drills focus on endurance. You drag your tired legs through repetitive footwork patterns, the dust rising around you in lazy spirals. Sweat trickles down your temples, salty and bitter. Later, during a rare break, you share a small piece of bread with a fellow gladiator, swapping stories of the odd foods your families ate back home. One swears by the restorative power of chickpeas, while another insists on the benefits of a smoky cheese called pecorino. A whispered debate circulates about whether gladiators were given supplements like dried fruits or honey more for energy or just to keep spirits up. There's no definitive answer, only educated guesses. The afternoon heat is relentless, the sun beating down like a merciless overseer. Your skin prickles under your faded tunic as you train with wooden weapons, each movement a measured exercise in control rather than brute strength. Dinner is simple, as usual. Barley porridge with a drizzle of honey and some dried figs. You chew slowly, savoring the sweetness in contrast to the day's exertion. As night falls, you lay down on your straw mattress, feeling the comforting weight of routine settle over you. The rhythmic breathing of your fellow gladiators is a lullaby of shared endurance. The scent of crushed herbs drifts faintly through the air, mingling with the cool breeze slipping in through the window slats. You close your eyes, thinking about the strange paradox of your diet, humble, repetitive, yet oddly sustaining. Your thoughts drift softly into dreams, where the clang of swords fades into a gentle, soothing quiet. The dawn arrives slow and reluctant, painting the camp in hues of dusty rose and pale gold. You stretch your arms, feeling the familiar ache that comes from yesterday's unrelenting drills. Hunger gnaws quietly beneath the surface, but you know the routine. A bowl of porridge, the Lannister's orders, and then the long hours of practice. The kitchen buzzes softly as the cook prepares today's breakfast. You recognize the faint aroma of roasted chickpeas mingling with the barley porridge. A small but welcome variation. It reminds you that even within this monotonous diet, there are subtle changes meant to stave off the creeping monotony. The Lannister gathers you and the other fighters for a talk on the importance of minerals, especially calcium and potassium, in your diet. He explains that these elements are essential for muscle function and bone strength, crucial for your survival in the arena. You nod along, already aware of the aches in your joints and the dull pains in your limbs. Historians still debate whether ancient gladiators had a deliberate, supplement, regimen or if these benefits came merely from the foods available to them. Some suggest that certain ash-rich plant ashes were added to meals as a primitive supplement, bizarre, but intriguing. As the day heats up, you feel the effects of fatigue creeping in. The training is relentless, pushing your endurance to the limits. Today's drills are more technical, focusing on footwork and weapon handling rather than brute strength. During a brief break, a teammate shows you a secret stash of dried figs and walnuts, a rare treat smuggled from the nearby market. You nibble cautiously, savoring the sweetness and crunch. A small rebellion against the camp's bland fare. Later, as you prepare for the afternoon's mock battles, you think about how nutrition influences not only your physical state but your mental focus. The Lannister reminds you that a clear mind can be just as important as a strong body, a lesson you've learned through painful experience. Dinner is as predictable as ever. Barley porridge thickened with lentils, a drizzle of honey, and a small piece of rustic bread. The simplicity of the meal is almost meditative, a quiet punctuation at the end of a grueling day. You lie down on your straw mattress, the cool night air drifting in through the cracks in the wooden walls. Your thoughts settle like the dust outside, soft and slow, as the steady rhythm of the camp lulls you into sleep. A thin mist clings to the morning air as you emerge from the barracks. The sky a pale wash of blue-gray. You pull your cloak tighter against the lingering chill, the faint scent of damp earth mixing with the familiar aroma of roasting barley from the kitchen. Breakfast is the usual staple, porridge thick with cracked barley and sprinkled with a few crushed hazelnuts. The nuts add a surprising texture, a welcome distraction from the monotony of the meal. You savor the nutty crunch, appreciating this tiny luxury amid the usual sameness. Today, the Lannister introduces a lecture on hydration, a surprisingly tricky subject in the arid Roman climate. He warns that dehydration could sap your strength faster than any opponent's sword, and that drinking water sparingly was common, especially when supplies were limited. There's an odd mention of gladiators drinking vinegar mixed with water, called posca, to quench thirst and replenish electrolytes. You try to imagine sipping sour vinegar after a brutal fight, less than appealing, but apparently effective. Historians still debate the exact composition and usage of posca in gladiator camps, leaving room for speculation about its true role. Training today is grueling, focusing on agility drills and reaction times. You feel your muscles respond sluggishly at first, still adjusting to the lack of fresh water and the lingering fatigue from yesterday. Between sessions, you notice some gladiators chewing on small pieces of dried fruit, likely figs or dates, as quick energy boosts. The sweetness feels like a small rebellion against the austerity of camp life. Lunch is a modest serving of lentil stew, thick and unseasoned except for a pinch of salt. It's filling but bland, leaving you wishing for a touch of garum or some herbs to enliven the flavors. Later, the Lannister gathers you for a discussion on the psychological aspects of diet. He notes that hunger and discomfort can erode morale, But the shared experience of enduring the austere meals builds camaraderie and mental toughness. As evening falls, you settle down on your straw bedding, the day's exertions weighing heavy in your limbs. The camp is quiet now, punctuated only by the distant call of night birds and the soft rustle of wind through the olive trees. You take a final sip from your water flask, the cool liquid a small comfort against the dry grit in your mouth. Your eyes close slowly, the hum of camp life fading into a peaceful silence, ready to carry you gently into sleep. The first light of dawn trickles in through the cracks in the wooden shutters, casting thin stripes of gold across the dusty floor. You stir awake, muscles still sore but mind alert, ready for the next day's grind. Today's breakfast offers a slight change, a thin porridge of farro, a wheat-like grain that feels a bit coarser on your tongue than barley. It's still bland, but the texture shifts just enough to make you notice. A few roasted chickpeas sit on the side, crunchy and nutty. The Lanista gathers the group to discuss the importance of timing your meals around training and combat. He explains how eating too much or too little before a fight could influence your performance. A balancing act between energy and agility. Historians still argue whether gladiators ate immediately before battles or fasted for hours to sharpen their focus and reflexes. As training begins, you feel the effects of yesterday's exertion in every fiber of your body. Yet, the drills demand precision, blocking, thrusting, and evading, forcing you to move with calculated grace rather than brute force. Between exercises, you hear a whispered story about gladiators' use of posca, a vinegar and water drink that supposedly helped with hydration and digestion. Though it tasted like sour punishment, lunch arrives as a simple stew of lentils and vegetables, punctuated by a few olives for saltiness. The meal is modest but steady, sustaining you through the heat of the afternoon. You notice a comrade polishing off a handful of walnuts and dried figs, energy-dense snacks that seem like secret weapons against fatigue. You wonder how much these snacks truly helped, or if they were just morale boosters. In the evening, the camp gathers for a rare communal meal. Everyone shares stories about favorite foods from home, roasted meats, fresh fruits, sweet honey cakes, things that seem almost mythical here. The Lanista cautions you to appreciate what you have, reminding you that even this austere diet has kept countless gladiators alive and ready to fight. As the night deepens, you lie back on your straw mattress, the soft sounds of the camp settling around you like a gentle embrace. The lingering taste of herbs and honey on your tongue. You close your eyes and drift toward rest, ready for whatever tomorrow brings. The morning sun filters weakly through the overcast sky, casting a muted glow on the camp's worn tents and scattered equipment. You wake with a mild stiffness in your joints but a steady calm in your mind, as if the routine itself has become a kind of meditation. Breakfast is the familiar barley porridge, but today a small jar of honey is passed around, a sweet reprieve that lifts spirits even more than energy levels. The honey's floral scent mingles with the earthy aroma of the porridge, offering a brief moment of indulgence. Your Lanista stands before the group, launching into a discussion about the role of carbohydrates in the gladiator's diet. He explains that grains like barley and farro were the primary fuel sources, providing slow-burning energy necessary for endurance in the arena. There's a mention of a fringe theory that gladiators might have occasionally consumed wine diluted with water as part of their regimen, both to soothe aches and perhaps to boost morale. Historians still debate how widespread or ritualistic this practice truly was. Training today focuses on technique refinement, dodging, counterattacks, and weapon control. You feel the muscles respond with growing confidence, despite the persistent ache from days of hard work. During a short break, you notice a fellow gladiator meticulously washing a piece of fruit, perhaps a fig or grape, before eating it, a small act of care in an otherwise brutal world. Lunch is the usual stew, thick and hearty, though today it's flavored with a few sprigs of wild herbs gathered from the surrounding countryside. The fresh taste lifts the meal beyond mere sustenance. As dusk approaches, the camp settles into a quieter rhythm. You take a moment to reflect on the curious blend of simplicity and ritual in your diet. How even the blandest meal carries layers of history, culture, and survival. You lie down on your rough bedding, the soft hum of the evening insects providing a lullaby. The taste of honey still lingers, sweet and warm, as your thoughts drift gently away. Dawn breaks with a pale, gentle light that seems softer than usual, as if the day itself is easing into rest. You wake slowly, savoring the calm before the usual bustle of the camp begins anew. Your final breakfast is the standard fare, thick barley porridge sweetened lightly with honey, accompanied by a small handful of dried figs. The taste is comforting in its familiarity, a quiet anchor in the shifting tides of your gladiator life. The Lanista gathers you all one last time to reflect on the relationship between diet and survival. He emphasizes how, despite the simplicity and monotony, this diet was carefully designed to build strength, endurance, and a protective layer of fat. This, more than any sword or shield, was your armor. There's a final mention of the ongoing scholarly debate about the extent to which gladiators were actually vegetarian, and how their diets might have varied depending on location, wealth, and time period. It seems even now, centuries later, the exact picture remains a bit blurry. The day's training is subdued, more focused on mental readiness than physical strain. You move through the motions with a quiet determination, feeling the rhythm of your body and breath in sync. Dinner is a simple stew again, the warmth of the food settling in your belly as the sun sinks low, casting long shadows across the camp. As night falls, you lie on your straw mattress, the familiar scents of herbs and honey surrounding you. The camp quiets to a gentle hush, broken only by distant murmurs and the soft rustle of the night wind. Your thoughts drift, peaceful and slow, as the last remnants of the day fade away. You feel the quiet strength built not just in your muscles but in your spirit, nurtured by the steady, unglamorous diet of a Roman gladiator. The world outside softens, the harsh clang of the arena replaced by the soothing hum of night. You close your eyes, ready to rest deeply, carried gently into sleep. The day has been long and steady, the rhythms of hunger, training, and simple meals weaving a quiet story of endurance. As you drift off, remember that strength is often found not in spectacle, but in the small, consistent acts that sustain us through the toughest battles. Let the steady pace of this story lull you deeper into calm, where dreams come softly and sleep holds you gently.